Hi, I'm Linda. I'm 18 years old and I've spent my whole life at an orphanage. I don't have much, so I spend my days working in the vegetable garden there. I've always been a bit of a dreamer, hoping for a better life. My world used to revolve around my boyfriend, Kevin. We were around the same age. He was handsome and charming. One afternoon, I was standing outside my high school gate, feeling quite nervous. I was clutching a small box with a cake I had made, and my palms were a bit sweaty. I had been waiting for Kevin for 30 minutes, and he still had not shown up. I kept looking around, hoping to see him, but the only people nearby were a couple acting very sweet. I watched as the guy kissed the girl on her cheek and walked her over to a fancy Porsche. I remember looking at that expensive car and thinking how nice it would be to have a life like that. Then I saw something that made my heart stop. I looked closer at the guy by the Porsche and realized it was Kevin. I could not believe. I quickly moved behind a big tree so they would not see me. I heard Kevin talking to the girl in a very smooth voice. He told her thanks for the gift. Then he said that his new Gucci wallet would look much better if he had some expensive brownie pants to go with. I felt a wave of heat rush to my... I could not stay quiet anymore. I jumped out and screamed at him, calling him a total jerk. Before he could even say a word, I threw the cake right at his shocked face. The girl looked completely confused. Kevin did not even blink. He immediately told her that he did not know me and made it seem like I was just some crazy person. As soon as the girl got into the car, Kevin turned to me with a cold stare. He told me that we were done. He said that I might have a pretty face, but I was still just a poor little orphan. I stood there in shock, watching the exhaust from the Porsche fade away. My chest felt so tight that it was hard to breathe. I had trusted him with everything, but it turned out he was just a lying gold digger who only cared about money. I walked back to the orphanage with heavy steps, feeling completely broken and humiliated. As I dragged myself to the garden to start my work, I looked down at my muddy shoes and my rough, tired hand. I felt so exhausted by this life, where I always had to struggle and ended up with nothing. I was so desperate to escape this reality that I started to imagine a different world. I wished that a king would suddenly appear, tell me I was a long-lost princess, and take me away from all this pain to a beautiful kingdom where I would never have to feel this small again. I was just putting on my gardening gloves when one of the nuns rushed over to me. I thought I was in trouble for being late, and that she was going to nag me. But she was actually smiling when she handed me a piece of paper. I could not believe what I was reading. I had been adopted. I was so curious that I flipped the paper over to check the information. I saw that the person who adopted me was born in the year 2000. I thought I must have read that wrong, because that would mean they were barely older than I am. Before I could see anything else, the nun took the paper back. She pointed toward the gate where a black Mercedes G63 was waiting. A bodyguard in a black suit stood next to a woman wearing a long skirt, a mask, and sunglasses. I wondered if that was the person. I started to feel a surge of hope, thinking I was finally going to be a rich mistress living in a castle. Well, I really did. I actually stepped into that expensive car and sat right next to my new adoptive mother. I was so excited that I could feel my heart dancing in my chest, but the lady next to me was a complete mister. The whole ride, she didn't say a single word. She just sat there and was silent. The silence only grew heavier until we finally pulled up in front of this incredible mansion. It was huge, with tall pillars and windows that seemed to go on forever. As soon as we stepped inside the grand hallway, a maid hurried over and bowed to us. Only then did my foster mother finally turn toward me. She slowly took off her sunglasses, and I could finally see her eye. She looked at me and said that her name was Martha, and welcomed me to my new home, calling me her daughter. I was completely stunned. Her voice sounded so young. I realized then that the paper was right. She really must have been born in the year 2000. It felt so strange. This girl, who looked like she could be my older sister, was calling me her daughter. I just nodded, trying to process it all, but I knew this was going to take some serious getting used to. Before I could even settle in, my new mom told the chauffeur to start the car again. She said it was time for my makeover. I followed her back outside, and my jaw dropped when I saw a shiny limousine waiting for us. This was getting more insane by the minute. Next thing I knew, I was sitting in a plush chair at a luxury beauty salon. The room was filled with shimmering lights and different smells of perfumes and hairspray. There were so many expensive-looking products on the table in front of me that I didn't even know what half of them were for. I just closed my eyes and let the beautician work her magic. When I finally opened my eyes and looked into the mirror, I gasped. A total stranger was staring back at me. With this new curly blonde hair and thick layers of makeup, I looked at least 5 years older than I actually was. I felt a little sad seeing my cool blue hair streaks gone, but I didn't have time to complain. My new mom immediately handed me a new outfit to put on. I walked out of the dressing room feeling like a different person, but not in a good way. The dress was so tight and short that I felt like an an Egyptian mummy wrapped in bandages. I could hardly breathe, and don't even get me started on the high heel. They were so tall and thin that I had to limp along, grimacing with every step. My feet were screaming in pain, and I felt like I was going to tip over any second. But when I saw the satisfied look in Martha's eyes, I forced myself to smile through the discomfort. I figured that since I was a noble lady now, this must be the price I had to pay for my new life. After the makeover, it was finally time for dinner. We went to a restaurant so fancy that I honestly thought places like this only existed on television. When I opened the menu, I nearly choked on my water. I stared at the numbers in disbelief because a single meal here cost more than our entire monthly budget back at the orphanage. It felt like I was living in a dream world. Before long, a waiter brought out several beautiful dishes that looked like pieces of art. But then I noticed something very strange. Martha was still wearing her mask. I was just about to ask her how she planned to eat, but she suddenly turned to the waiter and ordered a portion to go. Then she looked at me and told me to just go ahead and eat while she waited for me. It was so incredibly awkward. I sat there chewing my food while she just watched me. I kept wondering why she was so insistent on hiding her face, even during dinner. But the weirdness didn't stop at the restaurant. The next day, I had to go back to my old school. Martha insisted that a muscular bodyguard follow me everywhere. It was a nightmare. I couldn't even go to the restroom in peace because he would stand right outside the door like a stone statue. I could see the other girls looking at me with fear in their eyes, and they even came near me. I felt so lonely and isolated. I realized that even though it was great to be adopted and live in luxury, I couldn't keep living like this. Being controlled every second of the day was just too embarrassing and frustrating. I decided I had to talk to Martha. To make things go smoothly, I went to the kitchen and made some squash soup. I hoped a nice warm meal would help break the ice and put her in a good mood. I knocked on the door a few times. There was no answer, so I slowly pushed the door open, thinking I would just leave the bowl on her table. But as I stepped inside, someone suddenly grabbed my wrist with a tight grip. It was Martha. Her eyes looked genuinely scary as she glared at me. She barked at me, asking how I dared to enter her room without permission. I was so startled that I almost dropped the soup. I tried to explain that I had just made some soup for her, but she didn't want to hear it. She forbade me from ever entering her room again. The tone of her voice made me shiver. I couldn't help but wonder what on earth she was hiding in there that made her so angry. After that scary moment at Martha's door, things only got worse. I was still stuck with that living statue of a bodyguard following me everywhere I went. It was finally lunchtime at school, but thanks to him, I was sitting all by myself. No one wanted to come near me with a giant man in a suit looming over my shoulder. I sat there feeling so unhappy and lonely, just picking at the food on my tray while everyone else laughed together. I kept my ears open and heard some other students complaining that the vending machine was all out of orange juice. That was my chance. I turned to the bodyguard and told him I really wanted some orange juice right now. I watched him walk away to find it, and I couldn't help but let out a satisfied little laugh. I was sure he wouldn't find any, even if he searched every corner of the school. It was a total success. I ran out to the pea field, and it felt amazing to breathe the fresh air without being supervised by that guard. I found two of my girlfriends, and we started chatting and laughing. I was right in the middle of a great story when suddenly my friend's eyes went wide and they scrambled away. I turned around, and there he was again. I told him he was doing a great job of scaring all my friends off, but he just stood there, silent as usual. It was so annoying that I wanted to scream. Later that evening, I was lying on my bed. I really wanted to set up a date to apologize to my friends for what happened. I looked out the window and started thinking of a plan. I had to find a way to avoid my bodyguard. I decided to take a big risk. I changed back into the simple clothes I used to wear before I moved into the mansion and managed to sneak out through the kitchen's back door. I made it all the way to the outer fence and thought I was finally free. But as I started to climb, a loud alert system started ringing through the air. I saw the bodyguard rushing toward me, but I scrambled over the top and made it through just in time. I started to laugh thinking I had won, but then I slipped and fell right into the bodyguard's arm. My heart sank. Before I could even figure out what to do, I saw Martha standing nearby. She was glaring at me with anger in her eyes. She told the guard to take me back to my room immediately, and her voice was as cold as ice. After the bodyguard tossed me back into my room, Martha started yelling immediately. She pointed at my old orphanage clothes and called them rags. She ordered the maids to throw those ghastly things away right then and there. Then she turned back to me with a sharp glare and told me that from now on, I would only wear what she allowed, and I was strictly forbidden from going outside without her permission. Before I could even open my mouth to argue, she slammed the door shut, leaving me in total shock. I couldn't believe how unreasonable she was being. I felt like a prisoner in a gold cage, and I knew I couldn't live like that. I decided I had to confront her, so I marched over to her room. She wasn't there, so I started looking around, trying to find some clue about who she really was. On her makeup desk, I found a picture of a girl that made my heart stop. I picked it up, my my hands trembling. This girl looked exactly like me. I kept asking myself who this person was and what was actually going on in this house. Suddenly, Martha rushed into the room. She sprinted toward me and tried to snatch the photo frame out of my hand. We started pulling it back and forth, and in the middle of the struggle, I reached out and snatched her mask away. To my absolute surprise, her wig came off too. I stood there frozen because Martha looked exactly like me, except for a dark mark on the side of her face. She panicked instantly, covering her face with her hands. I asked her what on earth was going on. It took a long time for her to calm down and explain everything. She told me she was supposed to marry the man of her dreams, but she had been diagnosed with a condition called hypochromia that affected her skin. She was terrified that if her fiancé saw the mark on her face, he would cancel the wedding. She had seen my picture on the orphanage social media page and was shocked by how much we looked alike. That was when she came up with the plan to adopt me and use me as a double to replace her on her wedding day. I felt a surge of anger. I couldn't believe she had just used me like a tool. I turned to leave, but then she did something I never expected. She got down on her knees and started sobbing, begging me to help her because this marriage meant everything to her. She promised me that once the wedding was over, I could go home with as much money as I wanted. Looking at her like that, she just seemed so pathetic. I sighed and hugged her, realizing I couldn't just leave her miserable. So I agreed to help. She gave me access to her Instagram so I could start talking to her fiancé, Elias. A few days later, I was sitting in a fancy restaurant with Elias. I was wearing a tiny Bluetooth headset so Martha could hear everything and tell me what to say. We had been sitting there for 5 minutes, and he hadn't even noticed I was a fake. He caught me staring and asked if there was something on his face. I joked that he just looked more appetizing than the beefsteak on the table. He reached over and stroked my hair, telling me I looked even prettier than the last time we met. I held his hand and told him that I felt like I was blossoming every time I saw him. It was such a cheese fest, but I was just doing what I was told. Suddenly, the mood changed. Elias sighed and gave me a very sad look. He told me his dad was seriously ill and they were in a very difficult financial situation. He even said the wedding might not happen because of the money. Martha immediately started yelling into my ear through the headset, telling me to say yes. So I told him that of course I would help him and not to worry. Martha was acting like such a simp. As soon as I said it, Elias stood up and said he had to rush to the hospital to see his dad. He walked away and left the entire bill for me to pay. I sat there looking at the check, thinking that something about this guy seemed really fishy. The next day, I was waiting for Elias at a quiet little cafe. He showed up late, rushing through the door and looking all flustered. The first thing he asked was if I had the money with me. I didn't like how eager he sounded, but I played along and handed him a bank card. I watched his eyes light up with greed the second he touched it. I also gave him a small gift box, telling him I wanted to cheer him up with something extra. Martha had actually begged me to give him that gift. She was so worried about the family stress that she wanted to comfort him with a luxury watch. As I watched him tear into the box and find a Rolex inside, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. It felt like such a typical rich person thing to do. Elias looked at the watch and called me pumpkin while thanking me, but then he sighed and said the watch would look perfect with a Valentino shirt, which he unfortunately didn't have yet. My heart skipped a beat, but not in a good way. I had heard those exact words before. He sounded just like my ex-boyfriend Kevin. I started to wonder if he was just using Martha for her money too. I decided to dig a little deeper to see if he was lying. I asked him if his dad was feeling any better and told him I really wanted to visit the hospital. Elias looked completely caught off guard. He started fidgeting with his new watch and couldn't even look me in the eye. He stumbled over his words, saying his dad was fine and that there was absolutely no need for me to visit. I reached out and playfully took the bank card back from his hand. Since his dad was okay, we didn't need to worry about the hospital bills anymore. He panicked instantly, frantically grabbing the card back and stammering that he hadn't paid the bills yet. I just laughed it off and told him I was kidding, but inside I knew the truth. I was certain now that he was just another gold digger. I went straight back to the mansion and told Martha everything, but she wouldn't listen to a word I said. She pointed her finger at me and told me to stop talking nonsense. She even insisted that I take a giant cake to his house right away. She thought he was exhausted from taking care of his sick father and wanted to give him a sweet surprise. I sat there with my arms crossed, feeling so angry that she was being so blind to his lie. Even though I was frustrated with Martha, I still ended up at Elias' house with that massive cake. I saw him outside, but he wasn't alone. He was in the middle of a heated argument with a girl I didn't recognize. I stayed back, watching from a distance. I heard Elias tell her quite cruelly that he should have broken up with her a long time ago because his new fiancé was much richer than she was. The poor girl was sobbing. Her name was Ruby, and she was begging him to change his mind while she pulled at his hand. But Elias didn't care at all. He just swung his arm away and hopped into his car without looking back. Seeing that made my blood boil. That jerk was treating these girls like they were just toys he could play with for money. I knew right then that I had to stop him. Finally, the wedding day arrived. I sat in the makeup room, surrounded by the scent of fresh flowers. But I wasn't just there to be a pretty bride. I had a plan of my own to carry out before I walked down that aisle. I looked into the mirror and carefully used a makeup brush to draw a dark mark on the side of my face, making me look exactly like the real Martha. I took a selfie and sent it to Elias, just to see how he would react. Right as I hit send, Martha rushed into the room. She saw my face and panicked, her voice shaking as she asked me what I was doing. I stayed completely calm and told her to just leave it alone. I told her that I was setting up a great show for her to watch. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with an Instagram message from Elias. He told me that I was beautiful on the inside and the outside, and that his love for me was indescribable. He even said he couldn't wait to call me his wife. Honestly, the guy deserved an Oscar for a performance like that. Martha looked at the message and felt smug, telling me that his sweet words proved he really loved her. I just smiled and told her that if she thought that was interesting, she should wait to see what I had planned next. Right at that moment, I received another text on my own phone. That was my cue to act. I signaled Martha to stay quiet and dragged her over to the window. We took a peek outside, and that was exactly when the person I was waiting for appeared. I stood at the back of the outdoor ceremony and started my walk down the long aisle. As I moved, I could hear the guests gasping and whispering. It was clear they were all staring at the dark mark I had painted on my face. I just rolled my eyes to myself, wondering if these people had never seen a skin pigmentation mark before. But when I reached the front, Elias was standing there with a gentle smile on his face. He looked so sincere, but I knew better. I just waited to see how long he could keep up this act. It was finally my turn to read the wedding. I opened my mouth to speak, but then the heavy doors behind us burst open. Martha barged in, looking absolutely furious. She screamed at Elias, calling him a liar and declaring that the wedding was officially off. Elias looked like he had seen a ghost. He started to panic, especially when he looked back and forth between the two of us. He stammered, asking why there were two of us standing there. The entire crowd was in an uproar, with people jumping out of their seats to get a better look. Martha didn't back down. She told him to drop the act because she finally knew he was only marrying her for her fortune. She even mentioned that she knew he planned to give that money to another girl. Elias tried to play it cool, telling her he loved her and calling her Maddie, but it was too late. Right at that moment, a girl stepped out from the crowd. It was Ruby, the girl I had seen him arguing with earlier. She let out a loud laugh and told him there was no way she would ever get back with him, not even in his dreams. Everyone turned to look at Elias, who was now trembling and looking completely pathetic. I couldn't help but feel a bit of satisfaction. I had finally caught the lying gold digger. You see, I had planned this perfectly. After I saw them together at his house, I followed Ruby and told her everything about how Elias was just using Martha for her money. We came up with a plan to expose him together. Ruby agreed to come to the wedding and pretend she wanted him back. Just as I expected, as soon as Elias saw that selfie of my flawed face, he had messaged Ruby to say he would take her back. I made sure Martha was close enough to overhear his phone calls and see the proof for herself. It was a brilliant plan. Now Martha's bodyguards are dragging him away, and I have to say, he totally deserves it. After the chaos died down, Martha and I sat together and she finally opened up to me. She told me about how her parents had passed away and left her all that wealth. She was incredibly rich, but she was also incredibly lonely, which was why she had been so desperate to hold on to someone like Elias. We both realized that day that real love is something precious, and it is always worth waiting for someone who loves you just as you are. Martha asked me to stay with her in the mansion, and we have actually become really close. I even got my cool blue hair streaks back. It turns out that we both found something much more valuable than the fake love of those slimy gold diggers. We found a sisterly love that I never thought I would have. I used to think my life was a tragedy because I was an orphan, but I've learned that family isn't just about who you are born with. It's about the people who stand by you when the masks come off. I've realized that I don't need a king to rescue me because I can be the hero of my own story, especially when I have a sister by my side.